Chapter 1. The moment everything changed. My name is Jordan, and I'll never forget the day I realized I was invisible. It was a Tuesday afternoon in downtown Chicago, and I was sitting in the conference room of Morrison & Associates, the law firm where I worked as a junior paralegal. The meeting had been going on for an hour, and I'd tried to contribute 3 different times. Each attempt ended the same way. Someone would interrupt me mid-sentence, dismiss my idea, or simply talk over me as if I hadn't spoken at all. The final blow came when my supervisor, Richard, presented my research on a complex case as his own brilliant insight. As he spoke, taking credit for 20 hours of my work, I felt something inside me break. Not with anger, but with a devastating realization. I had become completely invisible. Any questions? Richard asked the room, basking in the praise for his thorough analysis. I raised my hand. Actually, I'd like to add. Great work, Richard, interrupted Janet, the senior partner. Let's move on to the next item. My hands slowly lowered. Around the table, 12 people continued their discussion as if I hadn't spoken. I was 28 years old, had a law degree from Northwestern, and yet I commanded less respect than the office coffee machine. That evening, I sat in my studio apartment, staring at my reflection in the black window. What's wrong with me? I whispered to myself. Why doesn't anyone respect me? I thought about my life patterns. In college, in Toronto, where I'd studied for a year abroad, classmates would copy my notes but never invite me to study groups. In my previous job in Seattle, colleagues would ask me to cover their shifts but never return the favor. Even in my family, my younger brother Mike seemed to get more respect and attention despite being 5 years younger. I was tired of being everyone's doormat, but I had no idea how to change it. Chapter 2. The Unexpected Encounter. 3 weeks later, I found myself at a coffee shop near Northwestern University. Grading. Papers for a part-time teaching job I'd taken to make ends meet. I was absorbed in my work when I overheard a conversation at the next table that would change my life forever. The key to commanding respect, a distinguished voice was saying, isn't about being the loudest person in the room. It's about understanding the psychological triggers that make people naturally defer to your authority. I glanced over and saw a well-dressed man in his 60s speaking to a young woman who was taking notes frantically. Something about his presence was magnetic. The way he sat, the way he spoke, even the way he held his coffee cup communicated quiet authority. Dr. Walker TD, the woman said, your research on social psychology has helped me so much in my relationships. My ears perked up. Dr. Walker TD, I recognized the name. He was a renowned psychologist from Texas, who'd written several books on interpersonal dynamics and had been featured in major publications across the United States and Canada. After the woman left, I found myself approaching his table. Everything in me wanted to retreat. This was exactly the kind of situation where I usually felt invisible, but something pushed me forward. Excuse me, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Are you Dr. Walker TD? He looked up with kind but penetrating eyes. I am, and you are. Jordan Miller, I couldn't help but overhear what you were saying about commanding respect. I'm sorry to interrupt, but... Sit down, Jordan, he said, gesturing to the empty chair. What's on your mind? Chapter 3. The Diagnosis. Over the next hour, I found myself opening up to Dr. TD in a way I'd never opened up to anyone. I told him about the meeting, about feeling invisible, about my pattern of being overlooked and undervalued. Dr. TD listened without judgment, occasionally asking insightful questions. Finally, he leaned back in his chair and said, Jordan, you're suffering from what I call respect deficit disorder. Not a clinical diagnosis, mind you, but a very real social phenomenon. He pulled out a small notebook and began sketching. In my 30 years of research, including studies I've conducted with colleagues at universities in Australia and the UK, I've identified specific behavioral patterns that either command respect or invite disrespect. You, my friend, are exhibiting classic symptoms of someone who unconsciously signals submission. What do you mean? I asked. Let me give you an example. When I walked into this coffee shop, what did you notice about how I carried myself? I thought for a moment. You seemed ... confident, like you belonged here. Exactly, but it's not just confidence, it's a series of micro-behaviors the psychologist Albert Mehrabian documented in his famous research. Your body language communicates respect or disrespect before you even speak. Dr. TD began explaining concepts I'd never heard of, but that immediately resonated. He talked about research by psychologist Amy Cuddy from Harvard on power posing, studies from the University of California on eye contact and dominance, and findings from behavioral economists about how first impressions are formed in milliseconds. The good news, he said, is that respect can be learned. It's not about changing who you are, it's about changing how you present who you are. Chapter 4. The 5 Laws of Respect. Dr. TD offered to mentor me, and over the following weeks, he taught me what he called the 5 Laws of Respect, psychological principles backed by decades of research. Law 1. Command physical space. When someone approaches you to shake hands, Dr. TD explained during our first formal session, what do you typically do? I stand up and shake their hand. Show me, I demonstrated, and immediately Dr. TD shook his head. You're looking at my hand, not my eyes. Your posture is slightly hunched. You're unconsciously making yourself smaller. He taught me the proper way. Stand tall, make immediate eye contact, firm handshake lasting exactly 3 seconds. This is based on research by psychologist Peter Collett from Oxford University, he explained. First impressions are formed in 100 milliseconds, and your greeting sets the tone for every interaction that follows. Law 2. Master the art of interruption management. Tell me about the meeting where Richard interrupted you, Dr. TD said. As I recounted the story, he nodded knowingly. Classic dominance behavior. He was testing your boundaries. Here's what research from Stanford University shows. When you allow interruptions without pushback, you signal that your words have less value. He taught me the steady gaze technique, maintaining calm, direct eye contact with the interrupter while saying, I'd like to finish my thought. This technique was studied extensively by Dr. Robert Cialdini in his research on influence. Dr. TD explained, the key is not aggression, but assertive clarity. Law 3. Neutralize social attacks. When someone makes a joke at your expense in public, your natural instinct is to either laugh it off or get defensive, right? Dr. TD asked. I nodded. That was exactly what I always did. Both responses signal submission. Instead, use the repeat request technique. Calmly ask them to repeat the joke. This psychological tactic, based on studies of social dynamics by Dr. Irving Goffman, puts the aggressor in an uncomfortable position because jokes lose their power when repeated. Law 4. Redirect negative energy. Provocateurs feed on emotional reactions, Dr. TD explained. Research by psychologist Daniel Goleman on emotional intelligence shows that the person who stays calm in conflict has the psychological advantage. He taught me the context switch, responding to provocation with a completely unrelated calm question. It disrupts their attack pattern and forces them to recalibrate, he said. Law 5. Strategic withdrawal. Sometimes, Jordan, the most respectful thing you can do is respect yourself enough to leave. Dr. Tiede said, Dr. Henry Cloud's research on boundaries shows that people treat you exactly how you allow them to treat you. Chapter 5, The First Test. Armed with Dr. Tiede's teachings, I returned to work with a new mindset. The first test came sooner than expected. During Thursday's team meeting, I was presenting a case analysis when Richard interrupted me. Jordan, I think what you're trying to say is... I stopped talking, turned to face him directly, and maintained steady eye contact. The room went quiet. Richard, I said calmly, I'd like to finish my presentation. The silence stretched for what felt like an eternity. Richard's face reddened slightly, but he nodded. Of course, sorry, I continued my presentation, and for the first time in months, no one interrupted me. After the meeting, Janet approached me privately. Nice presentation, Jordan, she said. Very thorough analysis. It was the first time she'd acknowledged my work directly in over a year. Chapter 6, The Setback. 3 weeks into implementing Dr. Tiede's techniques, I faced my biggest challenge yet. During a client meeting, opposing counsel, a notoriously aggressive attorney named Bradley Morrison, began attacking our case with personal insults disguised as legal arguments. This is the kind of sloppy work I'd expect from a junior paralegal, he sneered, looking directly at me. The room erupted in nervous laughter from his team. My old instincts kicked in. Instead of using the repeat request technique, I felt my face flush with embarrassment and anger. I looked down at my notes, effectively shrinking into my chair. Bradley sensed weakness and continued his attack. Maybe next time, Morrison and Associates should send someone with actual experience. I said nothing. The meeting continued, but I had become invisible again. That evening, I called Dr. Tiede, feeling defeated. I failed, I told him. All your techniques went right out the window when I was actually under pressure. Jordan, Dr. Tiede said gently, failure is part of the learning process. Research by psychologist Carol Dweck on growth mindset shows that setbacks are opportunities for development, not evidence of permanent inadequacy. He helped me analyze what had happened. You encountered what we call an amygdala hijack. Your emotional brain took over from your rational brain. The key is practice and preparation. Chapter 7, Building Mental Resilience. Dr. Tiede introduced me to advanced techniques based on cognitive behavioral therapy and mindfulness research. He taught me visualization exercises used by athletes and business leaders to stay calm under pressure. Dr. Martin Seligman's research on learned helplessness shows that people can train themselves to respond differently to challenging situations, he explained. We practiced role-playing scenarios. Dr. Tiede would play various difficult personalities, the interrupter, the joker, the provocateur, while I practiced my responses until they became automatic. He also introduced me to the concept of psychological anchoring, developing physical cues that would remind me of my worth and capabilities in challenging moments. Touch your watch, he instructed. This will be your anchor. Every time you touch it, remember that you have value, your thoughts matter, and you deserve respect. Chapter 8, The Transformation Accelerates. Over the following months, the changes in my life were remarkable. At work, colleagues began seeking my input on cases. Richard stopped interrupting me and even started asking for my research assistance respectfully. But the real test came when I applied for a promotion to senior paralegal, a position I'd wanted for 2 years but had been too intimidated to pursue. During the interview with the partners, I implemented everything Dr. Tiede had taught me. I stood when they entered, maintained eye contact, spoke with measured confidence. And when one partner interrupted me with a challenging question, I calmly said, "That's an excellent question. Let me finish this thought, and then I'll address it directly." The room's energy shifted. I could see respect in their eyes, something I'd never experienced before. I got the promotion. Chapter 9. Expanding Influence. With my newfound confidence, I began volunteering with a legal aid clinic in Chicago's South Side, helping low-income families with housing issues. The work was fulfilling, but it also provided new challenges for practicing respect-commanding behaviors. Working with clients who were often frustrated, scared, or angry, I learned to project calm authority while maintaining genuine empathy. The combination was powerful. Clients trusted me, opposing attorneys took me seriously, and judges listened when I spoke. Dr. Tiede observed one of my court appearances and afterwards said, "Jordan, you've internalized these principles completely. You're not performing respect, you're embodying it." I began mentoring other young paralegals and law students, sharing the techniques that had transformed my life. It was during one of these mentoring sessions that I met Carlos, a recent graduate from the University of British Columbia who reminded me of my former self. "I feel like I'm invisible," Carlos confided. "No one takes me seriously." As I taught him the 5 laws of respect, I realized how far I'd come. Teaching others reinforced my own learning and gave me a sense of purpose I'd never experienced. Chapter 10. The Ripple Effect. My transformation had effects I never anticipated. My relationship with my family improved dramatically. During a family gathering in Minneapolis, where my relatives from across the Midwest had assembled, I noticed that people were actually listening when I spoke. My brother Mike, who had always dominated family conversations, approached me privately. "Jordan, something's different about you," he said. "You seem, I don't know, more confident, more like someone I want to listen to." Even my dating life improved. I met Sarah, a doctor from Northwestern Memorial, at a charity event. Later, she told me that what attracted her wasn't just my intelligence, but the quiet confidence I projected. "You don't need to be the loudest person in the room," she said. "You have this way of commanding attention just by being present." Chapter 11. Teaching Others. A year after meeting Dr. Tiede, he invited me to co-present at a psychology conference in Toronto. The topic was practical applications of respect psychology in professional settings. Standing in front of 200 mental health professionals, lawyers, and business leaders, I shared my story. I talked about the research behind the techniques, citing studies from universities across North America, Australia, and the UK that Dr. Tiede had taught me about. But more importantly, I shared the human side of the transformation. I talked about the loneliness of feeling invisible, the frustration of being overlooked, and the profound change that comes from learning to respect yourself enough to demand respect from others. After the presentation, dozens of people approached me with their own stories. A software engineer from Vancouver talked about being overlooked in tech meetings. A teacher from Sydney described feeling powerless with difficult parents. A manager from London explained his struggles with asserting authority with his team. Each conversation reinforced something Dr. Tiede had taught me. The need for respect is universal, but the skills to command it are rarely taught. Chapter 12. The Advanced Principles. As my skills developed, Dr. Tiede introduced me to more sophisticated concepts. He taught me about status, equilibrium, the psychological balance that exists in every social interaction. Every relationship has a status dynamic, he explained. The person who understands and can manage this dynamic has tremendous power. He showed me research by anthropologist Helen Fisher on how humans instinctively assess dominance and submission cues. He taught me about social mirroring, how to match someone's communication style to build rapport while maintaining authority. The most respected people, Dr. Tiede said, are those who can adapt their approach while never compromising their core dignity. I learned to read rooms better, to identify the real decision makers versus the loud talkers, to build alliances with key influencers. These skills served me well when I was eventually recruited by a prestigious law firm in downtown Chicago. Chapter 13. The Ultimate Test. 2 years after our first meeting, I faced the ultimate test of my transformation. Our law firm was representing a small business owner against a major corporation in a David versus Goliath case. The opposing legal team was led by Maxwell Sterling, one of the most intimidating attorneys in Chicago. Sterling was famous for his aggressive tactics and his ability to psychologically dominate opposing counsel. He'd made grown lawyers stutter and stumble in court. During our first mediation session, Sterling immediately tried to establish dominance. He kept everyone waiting for 15 minutes, then entered with dramatic flair, making jokes at our client's expense and dismissing our case as amateur hour. The old Jordan would have been intimidated into silence. But I'd learned too much to be manipulated. When Sterling made a particularly condescending comment about our inexperienced team, I used the repeat request technique. "I'm sorry, Mr. Sterling," I said calmly. "Could you repeat that comment? I want to make sure I understand your position correctly." The room went quiet. Sterling's confident smirk faltered slightly as he realized he'd have to repeat his unprofessional remark in front of the mediator. I was simply noting that he began, but the power had shifted. His second attempt at the insult fell flat. Throughout the session, I maintained steady eye contact, spoke with measured authority, and refused to be rattled by his intimidation tactics. When he tried to interrupt me, I used the firm but polite boundary-setting techniques Dr. Tiede had taught me. By the end of the day, we'd secured a settlement that was far better than anyone had expected. After the session, even Sterling approached me. "You handled yourself well in there," he said, extending his hand. "I respect that. It was a moment I'll never forget, earning respect from someone who had built his career on intimidating others." Chapter 14. Paying it forward. Today, I run a workshop series called Command Respect, psychology-based communication skills in cities across North America. I've worked with everyone from recent college graduates to senior executives, from teachers in rural Canada to tech workers in Silicon Valley. The principles remain the same, but each person's journey is unique. I've seen shy accountants become confident team leaders, watched overlooked employees get promoted to management positions, and helped countless individuals break free from patterns of being disrespected. One of my most memorable success stories was Jennifer, a nurse from Melbourne who attended one of my workshops during a medical conference in Chicago. She'd been struggling with doctors who dismissed her input despite her 15 years of experience. 6 months after the workshop, she sent me an email. "Jordan, I want you to know that your techniques have completely changed my career. Doctors now seek out my opinions, and patients trust my authority. I finally feel like the professional I always was inside." Chapter 15. The Science Behind the Transformation. Working with Dr. Tiede over the years, I've become fascinated by the research underlying these techniques. Studies from Harvard Business School show that people who project confidence are perceived as more competent, even when their actual abilities are identical to less confident peers. Research from the University of Toronto demonstrates that certain postures and vocal patterns trigger respect responses in observers within seconds. Neuroscience studies from Stanford reveal that when we change our behavior patterns, we literally rewire our brains, making confident responses more automatic over time. Dr. TD often reminds me that respect isn't about manipulation or tricks. It's about aligning your external presentation with your internal worth. Every person has inherent value, he says. The tragedy is that so many people never learn to communicate that value effectively. Chapter 16. The Deeper Transformation. What I've learned over the years is that commanding respect is ultimately about self-respect. The external techniques, the eye contact, the posture, the boundary setting, these are just manifestations of an internal shift. When you truly believe you deserve respect, when you understand your own worth, when you refuse to accept less than you deserve, something fundamental changes in how you move through the world. People sense it immediately. I think about the Jordan who sat in that conference room feeling invisible, and I feel compassion for him. He wasn't weak or inadequate, he just didn't know his own power. Dr. TD taught me that respect is not something you demand from others. It's something you embody so completely that others have no choice but to recognize it. Chapter 17. The Global Impact. The techniques I learned have proven universal. I've taught them to professionals in London boardrooms and Sydney startups, to teachers in Canadian classrooms and social workers in New Zealand communities. The fundamental psychology of respect transcends cultural boundaries. Recently, I was invited to speak at the University of Oxford about cross-cultural applications of respect psychology. The research presented by international colleagues confirmed what I'd experienced firsthand. These principles work because they tap into basic human psychology that exists across all cultures. A professor from the University of Melbourne shared fascinating research about how respect signals are recognized even across language barriers. A researcher from the University of Toronto presented data showing how respect-commanding behaviors lead to measurable career advancement in diverse professional environments. Chapter 18. Full Circle. 5 years after that first meeting in the Chicago coffee shop, Dr. TD and I were having lunch at the same table where we'd first met. I was telling him about my latest workshop series when he smiled and said something that stopped me mid-sentence. "Jordan, do you realize what you've become?" "What do you mean?" "You've become the person that scared, invisible paralegal needed to meet 5 years ago. You're now the mentor that younger version of yourself was desperately seeking." It was true. I'd gone from being someone who couldn't command respect in a conference room to someone who taught others how to transform their own lives through respect psychology. The student has become the teacher, Dr. TD continued. But more than that, you've become living proof that these principles work. You're not just teaching techniques anymore. You're inspiring transformation. Conclusion: your respect revolution starts now. As I write this story, I think about everyone who has ever felt invisible, overlooked, or disrespected. If you recognize yourself in my journey, I want you to know something. You already have everything you need to command respect. You just need to learn how to let others see it. The techniques Dr. TD taught me aren't magic tricks or manipulation tactics. They're based on solid psychological research about how humans unconsciously assess and respond to each other. When you align your behavior with these natural patterns, respect follows naturally. But remember, this isn't about becoming someone you're not. It's about becoming more fully who you already are. It's about refusing to hide your light under a bushel of self-doubt and learned helplessness. Your respect revolution starts with a simple decision: to stop accepting less than you deserve. It continues with small daily choices: standing a little taller, speaking a little clearer, setting boundaries a little firmer. The research is clear, the techniques are proven, and the transformation is possible. The only question is, are you ready to stop being invisible? Dr. Tiede always says that respect is like a muscle. The more you exercise it, the stronger it becomes. Start today. Practice tomorrow. Transform your life one respectful interaction at a time. The world is waiting to see who you really are. It's time to show them. Your journey from invisible to invaluable starts now. The first step is believing you deserve better. The second step is learning how to make others believe it too. The techniques are simple. The transformation is profound. The time is now.